so excited to have you with us live. As you're coming in, feel free to hop in the chat here on Substack and let us know where in the world you are tuning in from. And if you have any questions for Eleanor, I will do my best to keep an eye on the comments, and I might bring a few of those questions into the conversation later on. So I'm so delighted to be here with you today and to introduce our guest. Today we are joined by the wonderful Eleanor Anstruther, our guest judge for the February contest here at Writers Hour magazine. So our February
Hi, everyone.
contest theme, the fence, as well as the accompanying prompts for this month, they were designed to be in conversation with Eleanor's forthcoming novel, Fallout, which I am so lucky to have an advanced reader copy of. So we're going to chat a bit about the contest. We're going to chat about the theme, hear how it was inspired by Eleanor's book. Oh, hi, Kitty. And we're going to give you a peek behind the scenes at what Eleanor is looking for as a guest judge. So I'm going to properly introduce Eleanor, and then we will dive right in. Eleanor Anstruther is an acclaimed British novelist and the creator of The Literary Obsessive on Substack, where she serializes her novels ahead of publication. Her debut novel, A Perfect Explanation, was longlisted for the Desmond Elliott Prize and the Not the Booker Prize. Her forthcoming novel, Fallout, set in 1982 at Greenham Women's Peace Camp, a real protest encampment formed in opposition to nuclear missiles stationed at RAF Greenham Common, will be out in February of this year. Welcome, Eleanor.
Out in April.
April, that's right. Well, so excited to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Good to see you.
And just want to say, I leave every conversation I have with you so excited to turn back to my own writing. And so I'm just already, I want to thank you in advance for being with us today.
Oh, that's so nice, Lindsay. Thanks. I mean, we were just saying before we came on live, just inspiring each other with our own work and each other's work is just, it's as much the job of the writer, I think, in community as it is our own work.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So
it's really great to hear that.
I think you embody what it means to be a good literary citizen in that way, in terms of encouraging and inspiring others. So let's start with the contest. So our theme for February is the fence, and it was inspired by Fallout. So for writers who are approaching this prompt, what advice do you have for folks who aren't sure about how to approach that theme? Would you start literally? Would you immediately go metaphoric? How would you think about approaching the sort of broad theme of the fence?
Well, the fence can be interpreted in so many ways. As we explored in the writing hour that we did, I think last week, from a literal fence to the internal fences. I mean, I think the way that I always approach all prompts, and this is all points of inspiration, is to really listen out for the immediate aspect or thing that comes to me. So when if you listening now, our lovely audience, when you hear that word, the fence, as a prompt, really pay attention to the very first thing it brings up in you. And it might bring up a very visual fence in your past. It might bring up something much more internal in terms of an internal personal struggle. It might be the boundaries that are unwritten within our families. It might be the systemic boundaries that are unwritten in society. I think always the thing to do is to really go with the first thing that comes to you and really trust that and just pull that thread and follow it. And it might, when I did the writing with everybody in our last week, and I found that I'd sort of begin with something very internal and emotional, but it would literally, as I crossed that line inside of me and explored that fence, it would take me outside of myself and into memories of actual fences. So I think you can I always say, really, really trust the writer in you and always be a little bit out of your depth and always be a little bit scared.
That's such good advice. And I think that's incredible advice, especially with prompts, is really trusting the first fruits of the mind. And I think we saw in that hour when people let themselves really stay close to whatever that initial instinct was, there were so many surprises waiting just sort of around the corner. I want you to
And
say,
also,
go ahead.
well, also just one more thing I'd say about that. What's interesting about that, particularly, and this applies to all prompts, but particularly, there's a nice little doubling back with this defense that what the first thing we often meet when we're given a prompt and we hear it, and the first thing we often meet is that fence inside of us that says, "Oh no, I can't go there," and then that's a discarding of that first. So to be conscious of not only what it brings up, but also the immediate fence that it brings up inside of you that says, I must not go there, because it could guaranteed that's where you have to go.
I don't know if I've told you this in one of our chats. Maybe I have. I learned this from the memoirist Melissa Febos, this exercise. I have a list that I add to all the time, and this list is called Things I Am Not Allowed to Write About.
Yeah.
And I force myself to write from it regularly.
Yep, exactly. Cut the fence.
Exactly. And I wonder, as you and I were crafting these, so we have this sort of larger theme for the month, for the contest, which is the fence. And then we have these accompanying weekly prompts that we're thinking of as sort of doorways, like possible avenues people can take into the contest theme. And as we were crafting them, we were talking a lot about boundaries and disobedience. And we're going to talk about your book in just a minute, but I wonder if you can share a little bit what kind of tension, creative, generative tension, you think becomes available to us as writers when we put our characters in confrontation with a boundary.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about this before in terms that the writers, we must all be, as writers, we must all be disobedient as writers. And when we meet our characters in that place, there's often this urge to take them away from the danger. I was reading somewhere the other day, someone said, I think they're long dead, this writer, but they said, put your characters up a tree and then shoot at them or throw bricks at them or something. You know what I mean? And so there's that urge when our characters meet a boundary or a fence or that bit that's a challenge. There's often an urge to somehow take them away from that, make it better, make it easier for them. But that's the other thing I do when they meet, whether it's a figurative boundary or an actual plot-driven boundary, is to really stay in that scene and stay with them. Stay and watch what they do with that boundary, whether it's an internal one or an external one. Because again, there's often a temptation to, when something gets challenging within writing fiction or memoir, there's often a temptation to, when it gets hard, to kind of and then they're happily lived ever after. Do you know what I mean? Just like tied up, but actually stay at the fence. Stay at the boundary and watch and see what they do. And they might do nothing, but something, by staying there with them, they will change. So and that's the tension. I think really the tension is for the writer to stay. I always say to myself, stay in the scene. And that there's such a tension to staying in a scene. But if you do it, you can then start to kind of calm down and write the tension of the actual scene. So in that terribly difficult way, you've both got to be completely in it and completely out of it at the same time, and it's a very fine line to walk.
It's such an important reminder, though. I keep having conversations with people where I'm realizing that the real work of the artist is learning how to be uncomfortable, to sit in the discomfort of a scene for longer than you think you can. And
no doubt.
I wonder, I would love to hear you say more about disobedience as a writer. What does that mean to you? What does it mean to you spiritually, practically, like in your daily writing life?
Well, I mean, there's a very wide view around disobedience where I have had, when I've been submitting work, I've had notes back. If somebody gives you notes and they're not offering you a deal, ignore them. It's basically the rule. But I've had notes back, which, there's an obedience that's wanted in terms of being obedient to certain laws and structures and known commercial tropes. And I have been very disobedient around that because and I have very dear friends who are able to be obedient. So this is a choice, who are able to be obedient around that. And they're able to write very good novels and they publish them. But I have never, ever been able to do as I'm told in terms of my artistic output. So there's a disobedience there without any doubt. There's a disobedience, I think, also in asking to develop certain characters because, again, and this might be somebody who I am working with a deal, because they want to know more about that character, and that it's great that they don't want to know more, but the fact is the work doesn't demand it. And the only thing that I'm obedient towards is the work itself. If the work says no, the answer is no. And I don't care who asks me, and I don't care even at the cost of my career, because I just can't do it. So I think that's probably where my disobedience shows up. And also, I think just getting right down into the dirty underbelly where nobody wants to go and look at human behavior. I know that there's a kind of systemic I'm disobedient. I'm disobeying the system there in that sense of just making everything all right. Also, the tying up in endings of novels. I mean, I know I display a great disobedience there because I will not tie things up in a neat bow unless the novel demands that I tie it up in a neat bow, and then I definitely will do that. But yeah, disobedience I think it's a really vital part of every artist's life. All my artist friends are wildly disobedient, and I love them all for it.
I feel my shoulders dropping hearing you talk about this. I love this answer so much. And I want to shout out, there's a writer I love very much who's in the room in the chat. Erica Stern has a book out called Frontier. And I edited this book, but it's part memoir, part ghost story. It broke all the rules. It's a wildly disobedient book. And as you were talking about really just staying close to what is the book asking for? What does the book need? I was thinking of Erica's book, and I feel so inspired by you, by Erica, who are, and I know I'm going a little off track here maybe, but I think this is actually a great insight into perhaps what you might be looking for as a guest judge as well. How do you stay close to what a book wants to become? We have there's lots of what the market and industry tell us what the shape of a book should be and how we should structure and tidy up a piece. How are you tuning into and getting really close to what any particular work of art wants to be at its core?
I think this is a two-part answer. I was chatting with Kit Davala a while back, and she's an absolute master writer, but also particularly at plotting. And one of the things that she was talking about is that you can really display disobedience and act in disobedience with the formal rules of writing, of plot structure and rhythm and pace and all of these things, once you've really, really learned the rules. So in that sense, I think it's vital that every one of us does learn and abide by the rules just to begin with, just to really, really learn them. And if you go back and look at Picasso's, I think she quotes this, if you go back and look at Picasso's drawings, you will find really perfect draftsmanship, which then allowed him to break every rule. So I think in that sense, successful artistic disobedience is earned, and it's earned by really respecting how novels work and how plot structure works. So that's the first thing. But how you us are able to listen, I think it kind of rests on that, because once it's a bit like once you've really, really learned to swim, you can really start to enjoy all the other aspects of swimming. So the same with writing a novel. Once you've really, really understood how it works and how to do it, and you've done your 10,000 hours, and it is what it takes, then you can listen. It's like you can drive with a blindfold on. Like you can really, really listen to the very, very heart of the novel, because you know that your hands, the practical bit, knows exactly how to do the bit. So I think those two things, they really need to work in cohort, because that listening, and I think how I know the listening is because, I mean, my editing is a very, very slow process. I'm editing a new novel right now. I will sit with that chapter. I will read every single chapter out loud to myself every single time I go through and edit. And I will listen to the rhythm of those sentences and to the kind of contained aspect of the paragraph and the chapter. And I will know if I'm shortcutting, lying, cheating, being lazy. You can just feel it. And if you set yourself, like I set a very, very low bar in terms of the hours I work every day, but I have a very, very high bar in terms of standard. So I might take, I'll do 1 hour every morning, because but it's like a very concentrated hour. And I might work on the same chapter for a week, maybe longer, but until it's running with no little catch in my brain that says you're lying or whatever it is. You know how it is. Like if you're talking to somebody, you just hear that little, we can all feel it a little, oh, are you sure about that? I just do not let a single one of those pass the gate. I do not allow it. So it's deeply laborious. But the truth of it is, really great work, the best work that you can do, which is all we can ever do. You'll never get tired of reading that out loud. And if you are tired of reading that out loud, there probably is something wrong with it. So you can really rely on that, and that will teach you the listening ear, because it's a bit like a piece of music. Like the music that you love, how many times have you listened to that song? A gazillion. Are you tired of it? No. It's exactly the same with a piece of work. So just be like super high standards around it and really stay true to it. They are living things, the work that we produce. We are in cohort with a living thing, and it is speaking, and it requires that very, very quiet presence. But I would advise people, do less with more, with higher standards. That's what I do.
It's such good advice, I think. And I have just such deep admiration for that level of rigor with the work. It's this is a good time, I think, now to turn toward the book. It's very evident in this book, Eleanor. There's like a rigorous refusal to like waste the reader's time.
I'm so pleased you said that. That's one of the things I like on my line. Do not wait. Like I really value my readers' time, and I will not waste it. As consciously anyway. I will do my best not to waste it.
Well, I've said this to you, and I'll say it to folks in the room. This book is time well spent. It is. So I wonder if you can situate us in the world of the novel. The prologue does such a gorgeous job of doing that. I wonder if you might read it for us. It's pretty brief.
Sure. Pretty brief. It'd be a pleasure with my glasses reflecting the light. Okay. In 1981, prompted by the arrival into their kitchens of the survival manual, which I have here actually, Protest and Survive, which had been issued by the Home Office in case of nuclear war, 4 women in Wales gathered a small group of like-minded people and marched from Glamorgan to Berkshire. They wanted to raise awareness of the nuclear weapons policy of the British government, specifically the plan to site cruise missiles at an RAF base near Newbury, as part of a defence policy known as Mutually Assured Destruction, or MAD for short. In the run-up to the march, the group had done their best to alert the media, but finding no press waiting for them when they arrived at RAF Greenham Common, and only a security guard who mistook them for cleaners, they chained themselves to the gate, thinking surely this would arouse some interest. Amazingly, nothing happened. So they decided to stay until something did, and a camp was set up at Main Gate, which would become known as Yellowgate. A year passed, and still the media yawned and said their readers would rather know about Mark Thatcher lost in the Sahara and Princess Diana giving birth to a boy. So the women agreed that if they were going to raise a protest movement, they had to do it themselves. The first mass action was planned for December the 12th, 1982. Embrace the base on Sunday, close the base on Monday, was spread through word of mouth and leaflets passed hand to hand. It always makes me cry, this bit, I want to tell you. They had no way of knowing if anyone would turn up. But on that damp winter morning, 30,000 women arrived to link arms around the 9-mile perimeter fence. Many never went home, and Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp was born. This is where the story begins.
I have goosebumps. It's quite remarkable. And I was saying to you, so the book is dedicated to Greenham women everywhere, which feels like it's an almost mystical dedication. I felt included in that when I read it, and I had never heard of this action before. And when you came to the writer's hour with us last week, there was a woman in that room who lives not far from Greenham Common, and she'd never heard of it either.
I know.
And I'm curious at what point what drew you to writing about this action, these women, and at what point did you know it wanted to be a novel?
Actually, it's part of a 5-book series. The first one is already written, which I'm going to serialize later this year. It's called The Moderns. And I knew the idea for the entire series is that I take a decade and I take a particular political action or within that decade. So The Moderns, which is the first one, is the first CND march to Aldermaston in 1958. And the one in the middle I haven't written yet. And then I was thinking about there's the 60s one and then there's the 1980s one. And so I was thinking about the 80s, and of course I was thinking about nuclear war, and I'd known about Greenham as a child. My mum was very politically engaged, so we knew it wasn't just a bunch of dirty lesbians, which was exactly, literally, I'm quoting there, what the British media called the women at Greenham. So I started doing some research on it, and I discovered that no one had ever written a book set at Greenham. This is the very, very first piece of literature set at Greenham Common. And that was just like, oh my God. Wow. I couldn't believe it. As a writer, I was just like, Jesus Christ. And then also as a political, an engaged political person, I was outraged that how is this possible? So that's what drew me to it, was just the massive gaping void in its existence in the literary world. And then the more I started thinking about it and talking about it, and I would talk to my children about it, and I talked to their friends, and I realized that pretty much no one under the age of about 45 had even heard of it. And then my outrage, if it wasn't aflame by then my outrage grew. Because as I studied, and I only knew Greenham from when I was a kid, I didn't really know anything about it, and I went deep into the archive. I interviewed a lot of women. It turned out Greenham Common, the peace camp, was there for 19 years. Right. Wow. And it's not in the British curriculum. It's written out of the history books. You can find a lot of the kind of video evidence on YouTube. There's a brilliant archive. I know you're going to put it in the show notes, Greenham Common everywhere. But it simply, these are the mothers or the grandmothers of XR and Just Stop Oil and the climate crisis protests. And they are the granddaughters and the great-granddaughters of the suffragettes. And they did, over 19 years, create an environment. It was an anarchic environment, so there were no leaders. It was non-violent direct action, exactly in the vein of apartheid and the civil rights and Gandhi. It absolutely deserves to be up there with all of these enormous political, world-changing movements. And it's just vanished, completely vanished. And so I wrote this novel as much to highlight Greenham as to put it back on the map and to honour the women who were there. And then the deeper I got into it, the more just moved and in love I felt with it. And then the characters started coming. Bridget was the first character to come. And then I knew I had something.
Mm.
That's when it gets exciting.
Well, I'm so grateful to you for bringing this action into my awareness because, as I said, I'd never heard about it. And I will share, be sharing plenty of links in the show notes. But you've shared some photographs with me. And just the photographs of this place, these women at this fence, are so life affirming. It's actually quite moving. So very excited for this to have a sort of new life in this book. And that,
yeah, and I'll post more photographs as we get nearer to pub date. I'll be posting more photographs there, but anyone could go onto Greenham Common, Greenham Women Everywhere, and see the archive. And I just should note as well, everyone, because the book, as much as anything, is about the point of protest, and it's worth noting that the two things that the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp coalesced around with these two ideas was to reclaim the common land and to get rid of the nuclear missiles, and they succeeded. They did do it. And that action, that freedom to protest, and this was thousands of women were locked up in Holloway. They had their children taken away. There was chemical weapons were used on them. I mean, live ammunition was used on them. It was not pretty, but they stood the course and they did it. So particularly now, I just want to remind everyone how important it is to protest and raise your voice.
and something that you pointed out to me when we first chatted, they stood the course, they did it, and they made art. The fence became an art gallery. It became.
I'm going to hold this up, actually. That was the other extraordinary thing. So there's lots of wonderful non-fiction books written about Greenham. And the fence, it became an art gallery. The women would create banners, extraordinary, beautiful banners, as well as hanging wedding dresses and pictures of their children and all kinds of things all over the 9-mile perimeter fence. It became an art gallery. And their strength was in their creative endeavor around protest. That was what they did. They sang, they made banners, they wrapped policemen in wool. I mean, they were incredibly creative about it. Because there was no head, it was anarchic. They didn't know who to arrest because it didn't matter how many people they arrested. The camp continued because there was no one in charge.
Well, just a quick time check. I've got some more questions for you, and we will eventually turn to questions about what you might be looking for as a guest judge of this contest. But if anybody out there listening has questions for Eleanor, or maybe you have questions about the magazine or the contest or Fallout, drop them in the chat. I'll try to pay attention to them as we go along. So a couple more questions about the book. So Greenham was literally organized around a fence. That's built in to this action that you decided to write about. At what point did you realize that it was perhaps more than a setting, but that there was dramatic function here with the fence?
I remember the scene. I remember first writing the scene when Bridget first arrives at Greenham. And I remember her getting out of the bus and it's damp and it's cold and it's December the 12th and it's drizzling. And she's never seen anything like it. And she walks towards the fence. And so the very first time Bridget sees the fence, in a way, that was the first moment I saw the fence. And it was so moving. And it was so much more than just this chain link that had American troops behind it. It symbolized for her everything that she'd been kept behind, everything that had been hidden to her. And also it became clear to her and all the characters and to me, the kind of weird, sickening irony that this fence was built to protect the women from getting near bombs that were designed to kill them. It was just so backward and extraordinary. And so I think that was the moment when, for me, when she first sees the fence and then she starts to walk along it and she sees the faces of the women. And these are women who she might have seen faces like this on the high street and never looked at them. And this is what happened to me after I wrote the book. I can't walk down a high street now and look at the women in the high street the same way, even though they may not be green and women. But it was like she saw women in the wild for the first time in her life. And she just didn't know that essence of woman or character of human could ever exist. And yeah, the fence became the thing that it changes them all. And also, I love that, a woman who would normally be down the gardening centre pruning her roses is crawling through mud with wire cutters down her boots and cutting through that fence. So that whole, the fence absolutely, Greenham becomes a character and it absolutely changes everybody.
I want you to know that was my reading experience as well, in terms of it's sort of shifted the way I walk down the street. The first women we meet in the book are an art teacher and a mother. And those labels, the things we have decided, that is a student, that's my art teacher, those sort of fall away. And there's like a wildness underneath, a vibrancy that's that has certainly I have carried into my life outside of the book, which is really a thrill.
To hear that. And I loved a lot of the Greenham women would tell me how they'd leave Greenham to go home to but the smell of the fires and the woods and the rain, and so you could just the scent of Greenham women was also carried this wild. That, it released the wild. And it's worth pointing out that Greenham, although it was a protest centre site, it actually became a refuge for thousands and thousands and thousands of women out of abusive situations, places where they could be themselves. It was so much more than, it wasn't an ideology, it was an idea that coalesced around this community of women being able to be themselves. It was really, it was absolutely historic and it changed lives.
It's maybe a good moment to ask Priya's question in the chat. Priya asks about how women might take ownership of the narrative. And, it is fascinating to me that this event has just been sort of erased from the history books. And you're doing it in a very tangible way right now. But do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to note that there is no judgment or right and wrong about the kind of activism or women taking ownership of the message of the book, and it contains women who can act out what they need to do within the capacity they have and the resources that they have, and they're all slightly different. So yeah, was that her question in terms of taking ownership of? Yeah, I think it's whatever it means to you, and I think you and I have talked about this. It's wherever disobedience shows up in your life that you can. I don't dye my hair. And I don't wear makeup. That's super disobedient. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a little disobedience here, and I carry them out all the time because I'm like, I'll go to parties and I will wear no makeup, and I may not even have brushed my hair. It's certainly going grey, and I'll think and I'll see but I'll always say to myself, well, the men aren't wearing makeup. Why should I wear makeup? And it just feels so fucking disobedient. Really thrilling, and I really love it. And just to say as well, when we say we're all Greenham women, that does include the men. Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp was only women only because they knew if men were there, the police would be more violent. That was why they did it. It wasn't anti-men, and thousands of men took part in all the off-site actions that Greenham women carried out. So it's really, really important to note that although there were women there who were very anti-men for the experiences they'd had, it wasn't against men. It was just that they needed the most practical way to make it work. That's why they did it.
Wow, that's really interesting.
But yeah, just to, whatever disobediences you can carry out in your life, big or small, those are yours. Own them, and they're all important.
I think I signed off a recent email to you.
You did.
Yours and disobedience.
I love that so much. Please sign off every email.
I will. Every email to everyone. That's my sign off now forever.
Really good.
Yeah. So I wonder, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll keep going for another 5 or 10 minutes. But I'm just so excited to have you as a guest judge. And I think, so we've made a recent shift at the magazine. We were hosting weekly contests, And this is our first shift to a monthly contest. The submissions are open all month long. And the reason I'm most excited about it is as a chance for writers to go deeper on a single theme and to be in close conversation with the work of one particular writer, in this case, you. And I wonder, when you sit down to read these contest submissions, is there anything you're hoping to feel as a reader or experience? What are your hopes?
Well, I like to read stuff that is unapologetic. I like to see that writers have taken away the scaffolding of qualifiers in a sentence.
Mm.
Just give me the sentence.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? You don't have to give me a few words leading up to what you're trying to say and give me a few words. Just say it. Because that is super exciting. I want to see, there's a boldness to that, which I really like.
Mm.
I want to, and that's the risk. You know, I want to feel like a little scared, but also I know the writer's got me. They're holding it. It's okay. So I can be a little bit, but I know it's all right because this writer has got me. They know exactly where they're going. I want to see risk, make mistakes. I get it wrong. I'd rather see that. Yeah, and as you know, write from the list of things that you're not allowed to write about. Absolutely, definitely. So yeah, I think risk, a little bit of fear, a little bit of scared, take out the qualifiers and be unapologetic.
There's a cat that's on my lap now. So if you see a tail.
Okay, I had Percy earlier.
Okay, good. This is Grendel has joined the chat.
Grendel, good name, man. Jeez.
She's a little monster. Yeah, maybe one or two more questions. But I wonder, do you think you'll gravitate toward literal fences in these pieces, metaphorical ones, maybe ones that move in between the two? Or are you open to surprise?
I'm totally open to surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it'll be interesting to see contributors, whether they start, their starting point, when they start with a literal fence and move internally, or start internally and move outwards. I mean, certainly, as we all know, a piece has to move from point A to point Z, and some sort of transformation has to happen in that moment. And whether it's that one's moving from a literal fence to a figurative one, or the other way around, or exploring the breaking of a internal fence and the consequences that come of that. And often what I find is, like, I might have an idea and I will put that idea down in the first paragraph, like do it right at the beginning. Like, I would advise people to not, if they think they've got a really good idea for like a reveal of put that right at the beginning, because, and you might end up with something quite different. But the fact is that if you, as the writer, can see what's coming in your first draft, then I'm going to be able to see it as well. But why don't you let yourself be surprised? So go without whatever you come up with, actually, like, give that away at the beginning and then go into the unknown, like take it and find out. And again, that risk. And so that's that feeling, I think. And that's what I'll be drawn to, is a writer, are pieces that I can feel that the writer has put down their initial thought. They haven't saved that up. It might be a brilliant thought, but they haven't saved it up because they know that they're going to come with something even better if they're willing to go into the dark cupboard under the stairs. Like, just take that risk, because there's always something. It's a bit like if you lose work, and we've all done this. I've lost entire bits of work. The truth of it is, when I write it again, it's better. So I'd be really interested. That's what I'll be drawn to, is work that, goes into Bluebeard's room, as it were, like the cupboard when you're not supposed to go. And it doesn't matter whether it's figurative. There's an honesty. That's the writing I'm always really drawn to, and really simple sentences as well. I read it. I'm part of a writers group, and we met on Sunday, and one of the writers produced this piece. It was really good. It was very Salinger-like, and it was just the beats were just really simple sentences. And occasionally, then they would just hit something like you can just. So I'm a huge fan of simple sentences, just tell the story. And then every now and again, if you just do that, out of it will emerge some one diamond line. And then just carry on with your simple sentences. Yeah.
This has got me excited I can't enter the contest, but I'm already thinking about I know, I'm like, what would I write in response?
Yeah.
This is such great advice. And yeah, I love the reminder to prioritize like real emotional rigor and honesty above, trying to write a fancy sentence.
Yeah, don't try and be clever ever, ever. Because you already are clever. You don't need to prove it to me with your writing.
Yeah.
Just tell me the story, like as if like you're not. And again, I know the word voice is overused, but it is the right. Your voice is the voice. Like right now, I'm speaking to you. This is how I write, and this is how you write. And when I read that writing in that Lindsay's voice and my voice, it's got that oomph to it that we can feel now while we're talking. That's what we want.
Yeah, this is great advice. And one of my favorite things about the magazine, we launched the magazine in September of 2024. And one of my favorite things about it is that we regularly publish folks who it's their very first time submitting to anything. They're new to writing. They have never submitted to journals or magazines before. And it's their very first publication. And the number of folks I hear who say, well, I almost didn't submit. I think the final question I want to ask you is, what would you say to someone who's hesitating to submit to the contest, or even to, the goal of the magazine is just to help writers generate new words. If someone's hesitating to engage with the prompt at all, whether or not they submit, what would you say to that writer?
First of all, I'd say I really understand. I know exactly how that feels. It's super terrifying. It takes a lot of boldness to do it. I would also urge you to look at the Martha Graham quote, "No artist is pleased," which I have pinned up on the wall. It's absolutely vital. And in that quote, she talks about if you block it, I think it goes, if you block it, it will never come. So a good way to get over that, if you've managed to write the piece, which is a whole other thing, right? But if you've managed to do that and you've got words down on paper and now you're hesitating to send it off, I would urge you to remember that you don't own it. It's not yours. You don't have the right to block it because we won't get to read it and it will just trot off and find someone else who will allow it out the gate. So I think that and it's a little twist we have to make in our minds, because obviously here we are, we need to be present, we need to listen, we need to put it down, we need to be rigorous in our standards. We need to be completely open and not judge the work. There's a million things we have to do simultaneously. And then once it's out, it doesn't belong to us anymore. And it deserves to breathe fresh air. And if you don't let it out, and I really understand that fear, I really understand it. I've been there a million times. But it's never the thing we fear, which is usually public humiliation of some kind or banishment. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty rare that happens. I mean, I have had that happen to me with my debut. But actually, the only thing I was banished from was a closed circle of do not speak that didn't serve me. And so actually what it was liberating. So, if there are some very real, and obviously if it's memoir, if people are writing memoir, obviously there are some very real concerns around those moral and ethical boundaries. And that's something I'm really happy to talk about at some other point, because it's prescient and there are some clear boundaries around protecting ourselves around that. But if it's about, I'm going to be hated, they're going to hate me, or they're going to laugh at me, they're going to think I'm an idiot, all that stuff. Well, those are cages that you don't belong in anyway.
Mm.
You just don't. And by publishing it, you will, I know it's a cliche, but you will set yourself free. And we love you. I want you to remember that. We're all on your side. We want you to succeed. That's why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to succeed. We want great work out in the world. And the only way to create work as well, just so you know, if you're an emerging writer and this is your first time out the gate, the only way to create great work is to create loads of not so great work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. I've written a million terrible things and probably published them, but that's how you learn. And we're all on the same side, and we're all here. Like the crowd is 100% with you. I always think when I do a live, if I do an audience big like event thing, I tell myself, I remember the audience want me to succeed. They're
Mm-hmm.
all on my side. So it doesn't really matter what happens. So that's what I would urge everybody who's listening. We love you. We want you to succeed. Please share your work. It doesn't belong to you. And the worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to learn something. And the best thing
Absolutely.
that's going to happen is that you're going to really enjoy it, and you're going to break out. You're going to break out of a boundary that didn't, or other of a. You're going to cross a line that didn't serve you anyway. Yeah.
And it's, we're a tiny team over at the magazine and at the Salon. We're real humans reading
Yeah.
every single submission and truly cheering for every one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a
And that's what I
beautiful.
love. I love about what you and the whole team do. You just absolutely walk the talk.
Mm.
You're all just like super intelligent, intellectually, but also emotionally. You're 100%. I'm so impressed with what you do and the support you do. Really, I'm so, every time you ask me to come and be part of it, I'm just like 100% yes. Because
Oh,
you support thousands of people to produce new work. And actually what we all want is great work out there
yeah.
because, it serves the planet and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you. I think
Oh,
I'm such a cheerleader.
that means so
Oh,
much. And
yeah.
it feels like a really incredible privilege to get to do this work, to be in
Mm.
conversation with you, but also the writers we support every day at
Mm.
Writers Hour and the community. I truly, I wake up every day and feel out of my mind lucky. And that's how I
Yeah.
get to spend my days. So yeah,
Yeah. And
thank
there are
you.
so many thousands of that's what's so heartening is every time I come and join in, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of writers out there. It just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's really, I use this term in reference to the photos of the women at Greenham, but it's life affirming. It's like, oh yes,
Yeah.
we are out here. We're making the work.
We're all making work. Yeah. So if anybody is listening now and hesitating, you'll be in really, really safe hands with the
Mhm.
team and
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
So please send your work.
Well, Eleanor, thank you so much. I want to share a few reminders before we wrap up this live. Eleanor's novel Fallout, which is right here. I love this gorgeous cover. It's out April 21st, 2026. You can find her on Substack at The Literary Obsessive. The Writers Hour contest on the theme The Fence is open now, and submissions are up to 1,000 words in any genre. You can find more info on the pin post at writershour.substack.com. I'm going to share lots of links in the show notes. But thank you so much, Eleanor, for your time. Really, really grateful.
I loved it. Thanks, Lindsay.
And thank you, all of you, for being here. We'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Bye.
Bye.